Want to thank you for checking out another podcast of FEARocious Talk, where we ain't scared. My name is A1, and last week's podcast was extremely enlightening and good for a lot of the listeners from the feedback that I got. It was about who really built America. The downloads on that outpaced any of the previous downloads. So I like the fact that as the weeks go by, it gets more and more popular. So check that out if you haven't already. And also, I want to take a moment like I did last week and let the listeners know that you will start to see an increase in imagery and the visuals for the hashtag We Ain't Scared. There are some things that are going to be happening this summer that I want to prepare you for. So this is the lead up to that. So you will see a lot more messaging and visuals for that We Ain't Scared. So also, so that you know where to find me, I am at podomatic.com under Society and Culture, and also at iTunes under the category Personal Journals. And as usual, Black Lives Matter. Want to shout you out. We appreciate you. We need you. Please keep doing what you're doing. And then also don't forget about Flint, Michigan. That water crisis, it's still a problem. Just because the news has stopped reporting on it doesn't mean that it has gone away. So please keep that on the top of your mind. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. And it will be a bit controversial. I'm just going to prepare you for that up front. But it's called, or the topic is drug dealing in the black community our fault? Again, is drug dealing in the black community our fault? Now, what I'm going to say is what I believe most or some black people in the inner city are actually dealing with and could be thinking, but maybe not know how to present it or even have the courage to share. So I want to set this up right by first saying I don't condone drugs being sold in the black community. But I understand. I understand why it happens. A former Richard Nixon official recently admitted that America's war on drugs was specifically targeted at black Americans as a way of increasing the incarceration rates in American jails. Now, to me, that's worse than any drug dealer that sells drugs. Our government is supposed to be there to protect and defend the weak and the voiceless. But it did the exact opposite. America steers and directs poor, vulnerable, and disenfranchised black people to the inner city and then gets upset when the scraps that we are left with we use to survive and eke out a poverty-stricken, subhuman lifestyle. And again, remember, it was the U.S. government that flooded the streets of the black inner city with these drugs to sell in our community. I think most of us remember the crack epidemic of the 80s. All right, I know there was a lot to say to set this up, and want to go ahead and jump in, but just understand that the conditions in the inner city for a lot of black people, most Americans could not survive it, but we do. Okay, so here are the pros, meaning how we take something negative or our bad options and make the most out of it. Number one, it generates money for those otherwise unemployable due to felony convictions. Number two, entrepreneurship is fostered. These men and women could be CEOs of Fortune 500 corporations the way they manage and maintain these illegal operations. Again, not condoning it, but I'm thinking about the mind and the coordination that it takes to do it. These are smart, intelligent individuals. Just because you are poor does not mean you are not intelligent. Number 3, meeting a need that will never go away. Now, here are the cons. Drugs destroy families through mass incarceration. It creates drug addicts and ultimately destroys the black community, which is, of course, the obvious objective. But, as Nino Brown famously said, ain't no poppy fields in Harlem, Miss Hawkins. Meaning, we didn't grow it or ship it, but somehow we get the blame for all of it. It is complete BS. All right, let's jump into more of this commentary. Again, I'm not condoning drug dealing in the black community. But what irritates me is that people act like drugs are only sold in the black community. The fact is, white people use drugs at a higher rate than black people because there's more of them in the country. America is focused on marijuana and its legalization, but remember, white people use cocaine, heroin, pills, and other prescription drugs at a much higher rate than anyone in the black community because most poor black people don't have health insurance to see a doctor, to get the prescription drugs in the first place. Now, one could argue that poor people can still get pills, but my point is pharmaceutical companies are the worst drug dealers in the world. Now, I want to continue to deal with this contradiction, all right, of drugs in the black community. Now, first, the laws in this country are set up so if you have a felony on your record, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get a job, let alone one that pays a livable wage. It's easy for people that have no felonies or criminal convictions and have never been in trouble with the law, who have a dependable family and a good network of friends that they can depend on if they need help. But for those that do not have that support system, the mentality of survive by any means necessary rings very loud in their minds and ears. Be careful when you say what you would not or never do, especially if you have never been broke, desperate, and hungry. Survival at any and all costs is how humans are wired. Financial hardships, hungry children, and rent will make most of us do anything or whatever it takes to survive. We all have to eat. So, save the whole, just get out and get a job, or how come drug dealing is the only option? Black men and black people have been intentionally targeted for poverty by the American government. So what are poor people supposed to do? What, just stay poor? And again, of course, we all should strive for more. But when the government and American society treats you like a second-class citizen, even before any felony convictions, how well do you think they will treat you if you do have one? Money is what drives the world. America is famous for saying, work hard and good things will happen. Work hard and good things will happen. The issue is, when I do look for a job, you won't call me for an interview or hire me because my name sounds too ethnic. Or if I do have a felony, it's even worse. So now what are my remaining options? Work 3 or 4 minimum wage jobs at $10 an hour, earn $1,600 a month, and after taxes, take home $1,200 when my rent is probably $1,200, car note $300, food bill $300, light bill $150, clothing bill for me and my family $300, cell phone bill $200, and God forbid I or someone in my family gets sick, because minimum wage jobs do not have medical insurance. So all medical visits are paid for by who? Yours truly. Us, me, you, out of pocket. Again, I may not condone the drug dealing, but I understand. Now, wait until it's you with no job, no money, and a hungry family, and then tell me what you would or wouldn't do to put food on the table. Drugs are never going away, and it appears that more states are moving towards legalizing them. So, who knows what the future holds? What also bothers me is that the same politicians, law enforcement officials that want to be tough on drug offenders are those same people that drive their luxury cars to the hood to buy the drugs they want to outlaw, so that they can go party on the weekends. Well, these people need to be careful. The very people you're buying your drugs from are the very people that may wind up in jail. Then what's going to happen? Where are you going to get your fix and your hookup then? It's hypocrisy, pun intended, at the highest levels. These officials and politicians need to stop, and they need to think. They need to stop, and they need to think. It's like America cuts off our arms and legs and throws us in jail for rolling around on the ground. It's dumb. Now, drugs, while some would argue, are detrimental. My thoughts are, what if we didn't even have that to make any money off or make money with? What would we do? And again, I may not condone it because of its destructive nature, but I understand. And remember, the very same people, as I said earlier, that are against it, the biggest proponents against drugs or legalizing them, may be the biggest abusers of them. I read one statistic that said, if law enforcement patrolled Ivy League colleges and universities with the same level of intensity as they aggressively patrol the inner city, that the arrest rates for drugs and drug dealing would be the same, if not higher. The only difference is these rich white kids get to hide behind their wealthy parents' money. And money answers all things. If my rich daddy knows the police chief or donates to the mayor or some local elected official or governor, that pays for the protection of my child against police officers harassing them while they're at college. Now, I applaud Black male creativity and determination that no matter how bad our circumstances are, we find a way to survive, for better or worse. And the truth is, if everybody knows that a good paying livable wage or a livable paying job would solve this problem, how come Fortune 100 or 500 companies or politicians don't invest in job training in the inner city? I'll tell you why. Because they don't care. They hope we kill each other or die from drug-related crimes or overdoses. Hate of black people and black men is so bad that America would rather see us dead in the street than do the right thing and help us out of our conditions. So while I hate the fact that some of my black brothers in the inner cities' only recourse is to sell drugs, what I despise even more are the people and the system that is set up to steer them there and keep them there. That's worse because it's intentional. Nobody grows up saying, I sure can't wait to be poor and impoverished with a lot of mouths to feed so that I can slang drugs because of my felony conviction. It's created by the system, and it's the system that needs to be dismantled and thrown in jail, not the people that are merely reacting to the hostile environment around them. All right, okay, let's get into these questions. Question number 1. Is it a victimless crime? Is drug dealing in the black community, is it a victimless crime? You'll hear that a lot. Well, it's probably half and half. If you spend all your money on drugs and your kids go hungry, those are the victims. Now, there are a lot of other layers to this, a lot of contradictions, and it's difficult. You know, it's tough to really get a full grasp of it. It's tough. Question number 2. Should all black men in the inner city that do sell drugs just flush them down the toilet and wait for the great white savior to offer them jobs making a decent, livable, or living wage? Well, if you believe that, I got some swampland in the desert to sell you with a herd of unicorns to go with it. Yippee-ki-yay, you know the rest. Okay, question number 3. Is the American government a hypocrite? Yes. They allow the drugs into the country and target poor people that sell it. We have already discovered that the war on drugs was an intentional act of sabotage by the Richard Nixon administration against black people to increase the prison population. Question number 4. Will the problem of inner city drug sales and abuse ever end? No. As long as there is oppression and depression, there will always be drugs, whether on the streets or from the biggest drug dealer of them all, the pharmaceutical industry. Question number 5. Should America legalize drugs in all 50 states? My feeling is yes, and this is specifically as it relates to marijuana. I think it is an inevitable outcome based on the current momentum that is sweeping the country. Now, a few years ago, I might have felt a little different, but now let's just rip off the Band-Aid and do it. And the rest will take care of itself. All right. Well, I want to thank you for checking out another podcast of FEARocious Talk. You got some good food for thought. My name is A1, and we ain't scared.